Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into Tom Salzer's Random Wire Review, issue number 115.
115.
Yeah, this newsletter is always just, jam-packed with all kinds of his tech explorations.
Oh, yeah.
But this issue in particular just felt particularly dense.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to help you navigate it and really pull out the most interesting bits.
You're in for a treat. It is dense. There is a lot in here. This issue is a blend of retro tech, clever repurposing, problem solving, and even some new programming ventures that he's going on.
Yeah. Got vintage Heathkit speakers,
Yeah.
old ARL handbooks, even a Kenwood MC80 microphone.
Oh, wow.
Talk about a blast in the past. But then he also dives into some more modern things, like turning a Dell Wise thin client into a firewall and experimenting with the Rust programming language.
Yeah, it's a great illustration of how technology evolves, but the core principles of tinkering and problem solving, they remain timeless.
Right. Okay, let's jump right in. So Tom starts off with something new. Tech notes. It seems like he's trying to make the newsletter more digestible, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I think it's a smart move, especially considering the sheer volume of content that he produces. These tech notes, they allow him to delve into specific topics without overwhelming readers in the main newsletter body.
Right.
So this time he focuses on backing up and restoring Debian All-Star-Link nodes and using Tailscale, which is a networking tool.
Speaking of All-Star-Link, Tom was clearly excited about a new piece of gear, the Allscan UCI 120 audio interface.
Yeah.
He raves about the sound quality even when using it with a vintage Heathkit HS1661 speaker.
Wow.
So it's like he's bridging the gap between old school audio and modern tech.
It's a reminder that sometimes those classics, they still hold their own. He even used this setup to listen to the ARRL audio news.
Oh, cool.
Which he also catches as a podcast. Interestingly enough, he noticed a difference in audio quality between the two methods.
That's fascinating. Makes you wonder about the various ways we consume audio and how the technology impacts the listening experience.
Yeah.
And then he even mentions being careful about copyright when sharing a clip.
Yeah.
Always good to be mindful of those things.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that even in the hobbyist world, intellectual property matters.
Right. Now we get a peek into Tom's tech struggles. He had some real battles with different desktop environments on Debian 12, ultimately opting for a clean reinstall.
Oh, yeah. This is something we've probably all experienced at some point.
Oh, for sure.
Those moments where you just hit a wall and starting fresh seems like the only solution.
Yeah, you're just beating your head against the wall.
Yeah.
And this time the culprit was a pesky audio echo problem during All-Star-Link transmissions. He eventually traced it back to a misconfigured setting in a file that controls how his radio software handles audio. Talk about a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, and what's so valuable here is that he shares that process, showing us the importance of carefully examining configurations and settings when you're troubleshooting these complex systems.
Absolutely.
Right.
Now, prepare for a dose of nostalgia. Tom talks about his love for the ARRL handbook, specifically older editions.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing to see how passionate he is about the evolution of radio technology.
These handbooks, they're like time capsules,
Yeah.
offering a glimpse into how radio communication has evolved over the decades. It's no wonder he's so fascinated by them.
Yeah, he even mentions the World Radio History Archive as a resource for anyone who wants to dive deeper into this rabbit hole of vintage tech goodness.
It's a treasure trove of information for anyone interested in the history of radio and electronics. You can find schematics articles, even old advertisements, just a real journey back in time.
Next up, Tom dives into a more security-focused project, building a firewall using a repurposed Dell Wise thin client. He's helping a family member beef up their network security after some recent attacks.
Right. It's impressive how he utilizes existing hardware for a new purpose. He even had to work around the thin client single Ethernet port limitation by adding a USB adapter.
Oh, wow.
It's that resourceful DIY approach that really shines through in his work.
But of course, no tech project is without its hiccups.
Of course not.
He mentions an unsolved DHCP issue that's holding him back. Also, he had a display warning problem that turned out to be a faulty adapter. This led him to discover the importance of using an active DisplayPort to HDMI adapter, which is a handy tip for anyone working with displays.
It's those little details that can save you a lot of time and frustration. Sometimes it's all about having the right tool for the job.
And that wraps up the first part of our deep dive into Tom Salzer's Random Wire Review, issue 115. We've seen a mix of new and old triumphs and tribulations, and a whole lot of that signature Tom Salzer enthusiasm.
It's clear that his passion for tech extends beyond just ham radio. He's constantly exploring, learning, and sharing his knowledge in a way that's both informative and inspiring.
Yes, absolutely. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve into even more of Tom's tech adventures.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into Tom Salzer's Random Wire review. Before we jump back into his tech projects, there's something he mentions in his closing remarks that I think is worth highlighting.
Oh, yeah. He talks about all the stuff going on in his life, outside of the workshop, so to speak.
Exactly.
He had the car accident, the break-in, and the conference and everything. It's just a good reminder that even dedicated hobbyists, have lives beyond their passions.
Right. It grounds the tech explorations in reality.
Yeah, it does. It adds a nice human touch, I think.
Speaking of which, let's get back to those miscellaneous tech adventures.
Okay.
Remember that leaky battery situation in the Kenwood MC80 microphone?
Oh, yeah.
There's a little more to that story.
Yeah, he discovered the batteries inside weren't all the same brand.
Yeah.
I love those little details, like a mini mystery, hinting at the history of this microphone.
Right. Makes you wonder who replaced some but not all of the batteries and why.
Right, exactly.
It's those little quirks that make vintage tech so intriguing. And it gets better. Tom's going to modify the microphone for USB power.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Taking a classic piece of gear and giving it a modern upgrade. I love it.
He's even thinking about adding a switch to toggle between USB and battery power.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah.
I love how he thinks through those modifications.
It's a great example of how, understanding the fundamentals of electronics allows you to adapt and improve things. He really embodies that DIY spirit.
He does. Now, let's shift gears to something a bit more modern.
Okay.
Tom's exploration of the Rust programming language.
Yes.
He's installed it on both his Debian and Windows machines.
Yeah.
So he's serious about learning it.
He is.
I'm curious about this, too. Rust has been getting a lot of buzz in the tech world. I hear it's known for its speed and security.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think drew Tom to it?
Well, it's becoming increasingly popular for building reliable and efficient software.
Okay.
My guess is he's probably drawn to its focus on memory safety and performance, which are essential for the types of projects he tackles.
Yeah. And true to form, he's not just reading about it. He's diving in head first.
He is.
He even installed and started using a networking tool called Trippy,
Oh.
which is built with Rust. He uses it to analyze network issues, and he even provides the commands to run it on both Debian and Windows. Super helpful for anyone who wants to try it out.
Right. It's that blend of exploring new technologies and then providing practical guidance that makes his writing so valuable.
I agree. Now, speaking of practical, let's talk about something we can all relate to.
Okay.
The quest for comfortable headphones.
Oh, yeah.
Finding headphones that don't hurt your ears after a while is a real struggle. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean.
Tom shares his love for open-air headphones,
Okay.
which he finds more comfortable than traditional earbuds or over-the-ear models.
It's a good reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to tech. It's all about finding what works best for you.
Right, and Tom uses these headphones for everything. Audiobooks, movies, even Zoom calls. They've become his go-to for any audio task, it seems like.
It seems like it. Now, remember the TRMNL e-ink display, the minimalist device designed to combat notification overload?
Yes.
Tom shared a bit more about how he's using it.
Oh, cool.
His approach is fascinating. He's really embracing the whole digital minimalism thing.
Okay.
He's only enabled plugins for the clock weather and a few essential RSS feeds.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very curated, intentional way of staying informed without being bombarded by distractions.
Yeah, I get that. He even shared a photo of the display showing the weather. It looks super clean and easy to read. I can see the appeal of that minimalist aesthetic.
Yeah, it's a refreshing contrast to our usual screens, which are often cluttered and overwhelming.
Yeah, for sure. Now let's move on to a project that's still in progress.
Okay.
Tom's ambitious attempt to build a firewall using that repurposed Dell Wise thin client for his family member who's dealing with all the network attacks.
Right.
It's another example of his resourcefulness and DIY spirit. He even had to get creative to overcome the thin client's single Ethernet port limitation by using a USB adapter.
It's a clever workaround. But as we've seen, Tom's tech journey isn't always smooth sailing.
Right.
He's still struggling with that unsolved DHCP issue, which is preventing him from fully completing the setup.
You know, those networking gremlins can be tricky.
They can be.
But his willingness to share those challenges is valuable.
Right.
It normalizes the troubleshooting process and shows that even experienced tech enthusiasts encounter obstacles.
Absolutely. It's about learning from those challenges and finding solutions. And speaking of learning, remember those display warning problems he mentioned earlier?
Oh, yeah.
The ones caused by the wrong type of DisplayPort to HDMI adapter? That turned out to be a valuable lesson in disguise.
Yeah, he learned the hard way about the difference between active and passive adapters. It's one of those technical nuances that can easily trip people up.
Oh, for sure.
His clear explanation will definitely save others from similar headaches.
Right. It's a good reminder to pay attention to the details. Sometimes the smallest things can make a big difference. Now, before we move on to the final part of this deep dive, I wanted to circle back to something we touched upon earlier.
Yep.
Tom's dedication to preparedness. Remember how he relied on his backup All-Starlink nodes while his main node was down for maintenance?
Oh, yeah. He mentioned that in passing. But it really highlights the importance of having backup systems in place, especially for those who rely on their tech for communication.
Absolutely. It's a valuable lesson for anyone, not just ham radio enthusiasts. Thinking ahead and having redundancies can prevent major disruptions when technology inevitably hiccups.
So we've covered quite a bit of ground in this part of the newsletter.
Here we have.
From vintage microphone modifications and comfortable headphone choices to Rust programming explorations and the intricacies of network configurations.
Yeah.
It's a testament to Tom's diverse range of interests and his constant pursuit of knowledge.
Right. It's that infectious curiosity and willingness to experiment that makes his writing so engaging. He's not just sharing information, he's inviting us to join him on his tech adventures.
And that journey isn't over yet. We still have one more part of this issue to explore, including Tom's attempt to connect a Cessnom VoIP phone to All-Starlink.
Can't wait.
Stay tuned for the final installment of our deep dive into Tom Salzer's tech-filled world. Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into Tom Salzer's Random Wire Review, issue 115. We've covered a lot of ground from retro tech to modern programming.
We have.
But there's one more adventure we need to unpack. His quest to connect the Selfie 710 VoIP phone to All-Starlink.
Ah, yes. This project really showcases his problem-solving approach. He mentions that a subscriber had actually asked for help with a similar setup.
Oh, wow.
But he couldn't offer much guidance because he wasn't familiar with SNOM phones.
Right.
So what did he do?
What?
He went out and bought a refurbished SNOM 710 to figure it out himself.
That's awesome. I love that willingness to just jump in and learn something new, even if it's just to help somebody else. It really speaks to his generosity and his love for the challenge.
It's a great example of how the best way to learn is by doing it. He could have easily just pointed the subscriber to some online resources.
Right.
But instead, he chose to get hands-on and gain that firsthand experience.
Speaking of hands-on, let's revisit that firewall project with the Delwise Thin client.
Okay.
We left off with him hitting a snag with that DHCP issue.
Right, that DHCP issue. It's a good illustration of how networking can be so tricky.
Oh, yeah.
Even for experienced techies, it's a reminder that things don't always work perfectly, and sometimes you have to dig deep to find those configuration problems.
It's all part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And, while we don't know if he ultimately resolved that DHCP issue, his willingness to share his struggles, both big and small, is what makes his newsletter so relatable.
It makes you realize that even the most tech-savvy folks out there run into these roadblocks.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's reassuring to know that we're not alone, in those moments of frustration.
Right. Now, amidst all the technical details, there's something almost poetic about his closing remarks in this issue.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about his reflection on the crazy few weeks he's had.
Yeah, the car accident, the break-in, the hectic conference and everything.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Despite all of that real-life turmoil, he finds solace in ham radio and tinkering.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the power of hobbies and passions,
Yeah.
to provide a sense of grounding and escape.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even when life throws curveballs, there's comfort to be found in the things we love, in the communities we connect with, and in the pursuit of knowledge and exploration.
I love that. And his simple closing message.
Touch a radio every day.
It resonates so deeply. It's an invitation to connect with the world of electronics, to stay curious, to keep learning, and to just find joy in the process of creation and discovery.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Tom Salzer's world, what stands out to you the most? What resonated with you?
For me, it's his enduring enthusiasm and his willingness to embrace the full spectrum of technology, from vintage gear to cutting-edge programming languages. He's a reminder that technology is ultimately about human connection, problem-solving, and the joy of exploration.
Absolutely. Tom's Random Wire Review, it's more than just a newsletter.
Yeah, it is.
It's a reflection of his lifelong love affair with technology, a testament to the power of curiosity and an invitation for all of us to keep exploring, learning, and connecting through this fascinating world of electronics.
So, to our listener, what piece of older technology would you be interested in exploring or repurposing? What sparks your curiosity? Maybe it's time to dust off that old shortwave radio, dig out those vintage computer parts, or finally tackle that electronics project you've been putting off.
Let Tom's story inspire you to dive in, experiment, and discover the joy of tinkering. After all, as he says, the best way to learn is by doing. So go forth, explore, and remember to touch a radio or any piece of tech that sparks your interest every day.